I just saw this headline. I ditched the UK and moved to Spain, and no one warned me about the reality. CNN ran another one about an American whose move failed and she went home. Look, the media loves these dramatic headlines, but I moved here 14 years ago and I've helped hundreds of others do the same, and I've learned a lot about what makes a move thrive and what makes it stumble. Sure, sometimes a move abroad can go really wrong, but more often it's not disaster, it's disappointment. I'm James, and in this video, I'm going to share 7 no BS truths about moving to Spain. These are the principles I've seen make all the difference between people who settle happily and those who end up feeling stuck. Keep these in mind, and your move is far more likely to be smooth, stress-free, and successful. Here's the truth. If you don't know your why, your move to Spain will feel shaky from the start. Your why, your primary reason or reasons for moving is what will guide your decisions, keep you steady when things get tough, and make sure you're building a life that you actually want. But here's the thing about your why. It actually has 2 sides. There's the away from aspect, the things you want to leave behind, and then there's the towards aspect, the life you want to build. The away is often frustration, cost of living, politics, burnout, or not feeling like you belong anymore. For some families in the US, it's about safety for their kids. Or for LGBTQ plus folks, it's about being able to live openly and safely. Look, these are powerful, real reasons for wanting to leave. But here's the thing, if your move is only about escape, you can arrive here feeling unmoored. John, who I spoke to in Valencia, put it like this: don't make your move just about leaving the US or escaping politics or the economics. Make it about loving the culture, the attitude, moving towards something instead of just away from something. Things like a slower pace, time to travel, better food, retiring earlier, living somewhere that values connection and community. These aren't just slogans or nice ideas for your future life. They're directly connected to the life that you're actually going to create. Because once you know what you're reaching for, it becomes much easier to work out the specifics, where you'll live, how you'll spend your time, and the kind of life you're really going to shape here and build here. In short, if you know your why and what you're moving towards, you can then build a specific vision for your life in Spain. And so if your why gives you direction, your vision gives you a map. And without that map, you'll struggle to make good decisions about key aspects of your move. Take immigration. Do you need work permission? Or are you going to be retired? Or your ideal location. Is it going to be city, town, or countryside? Your budget. What lifestyle do you want? And can you afford it? You see, your specific vision for life in Spain will inform all of these decisions. I know maybe it sounds obvious, but this vision step is one that many people go light on. They fall in love with Spain on holiday and assume they just need to pick a location, get a visa, and the rest will sort itself out. But here's the thing, a holiday is a break from reality. A move is about building a new reality. That means slowing down, getting specific, and imagining what life will look like across various different aspects of your move. Do you step out the door into a bustling square, or is it open countryside? Do you want 4 seasons with rain or year-round sun and dry heat? Are you hoping to have a busy social life or something quieter? Do you want to speak mainly Spanish, or do you need to ramp up to a higher level of Spanish and in the meantime connect with more of an English-speaking international community? In other words, don't just think big picture about your future life. Go deep and specific. Picture a random Tuesday in February. What are you doing? And I suggest taking time and writing down the specifics for your vision for your new life. Give yourself a few sessions, not just one. Let it evolve. And if you're moving with a partner or family, do this separately first, then compare notes. Where do you line up? And where do you need to compromise? Because if you don't have that conversation now, you risk moving to Spain with 2 very different visions of what life will look like. Now, here's a key truth. One of the biggest factors in whether you will be happy in Spain is where you choose to live. Spain isn't just one place. It's dozens of lifestyles, climates, and cultures wrapped into one country. And some of the toughest stories you'll hear come from people who simply picked the wrong place. Obviously, don't confuse a great holiday spot with a great place to live. A city or town that feels magical for a week might feel very different once it becomes your everyday backdrop. So take scouting trips and make them intentional. Sure, enjoy tapas and paella by the sea when you're on a scouting trip, but also treat them like fact-finding missions. On a good scouting trip, you're really testing your vision that you mapped out to make sure it lines up with what the reality is on offer in Spain. Notice who actually lives there, mostly locals and Spaniards, an international crowd, lots of tourists. Keep an eye on prices in supermarkets and restaurants so you can update your budget with real numbers. And here's another thing, try to meet with people who already live there. A hiking group or a language exchange can be a great way to speak to folks who are just a few years ahead of you and hear about their reality, their experience. And here's a key step. Stress test the places in your location shortlist. Visit in the worst season. So if you hate the heat, try Malaga in August. If rain drags you down, spend time in Galicia in January. And remember, location doesn't have to be forever. I was speaking the other day to one of my masterclass alums, and he said that he'd decided to start in Madrid because it was an easier place to build community. That's like his stage 1 location. Then in 5 or 10 years, he's thinking he might move somewhere smaller or somewhere by the sea. He's seeing that as his stage 2. Well, you should think of your move as something that can and will evolve, not a once and for all lifetime choice that everything has to be locked in from the start. Now, figuring out your location is just one piece of the puzzle. The truth is, a successful move is really about how all the pieces fit together. Your visa, your finances, your timeline, your language level, your Spanish level. So if you'd like some help stepping back and seeing the bigger picture, I've put together a free Move to Spain self-assessment. In about 10 minutes, it shows you how close you are to your move, what might be missing from your plan, and what steps to take next. You'll find the link in the description below, or you can head over to spainrevealed.com/ready to grab it. Another big hurdle, and one that often sneaks up on people, is culture shock. Now, there's culture shock, and then there's culture shock. You'll hear plenty of people talk about the lighter shocks, things like, oh my God, they eat lunch at 3 p.m. here. Or in a YouTube video I was watching last night, a couple mentioned that the toilet paper here is rougher than the toilet paper in the United States. Sure, those things can take a bit of adjustment, but trust me, you'll manage. But there are some culture shocks that I think are legitimately challenging, and they can really get under your skin. So I got an email from someone who'd moved to Spain, and they said to me, please make sure you warn people about culture shocks, not to frighten them, but so they're ready. And then they went on to list a bunch that they're experiencing. Customer service that feels indifferent, tradespeople who don't always show up, real estate agents who aren't tightly regulated, and the nightmare of getting a driver's license where it can feel like there's a driving school mafia making you take endless classes before you're even allowed to sit the exam, especially when you've been driving for your whole life. Now, these things are real and they can be maddening. And often the things that drive you nuts about Spain are in fact the flip side of the things that you love about Spain. I've noticed that the root of many of these deeper culture shocks is that Spain isn't a culture of strict rules and hard edges. It's more fluid. It's more about people than systems, which is why sometimes bureaucracy feels a bit like a lottery. Whether you succeed can depend on who's sitting behind the desk and what mood they're in on the day you turn up. Now, I don't say this as an excuse for painful bureaucracy or for tradespeople turning up late, but I think realizing that culture cuts both ways can make the challenges a little easier to deal with. So alongside culture shock, expect very real emotional ups and downs. You may have identity shifts. Suddenly you're no longer the competent professional who knows how everything works in the world. You're the newcomer trying to open a bank account or figure out how the recycling works. Or you find yourself, as happened to me, frustrated because you're funny in English, but not yet in Spanish. There's the bureaucratic fatigue where even the smallest piece of paperwork feels like climbing a mountain, and there are moments of pure frustration when something that should be simple, should be so simple, just isn't. One audience member told me a story about going to the pharmacy not long after that arrived. She needed something basic, but she got tangled up in Spanish and ended up leaving in tears. She sat at home and said she felt like she was a failure, but she wasn't. She was just human, a human trying to build a new life in a new country and in a new language. Psychologists have actually mapped this process of culture shocks and adaptation out. At first, there's the honeymoon phase where everything feels magical. Then comes the dip. In other words, culture shock. But with time, you move into adjustment where, routines settle and things start to feel more manageable. And finally, mastery. This is where life here feels natural, even more like home than back home. So if you find yourself in that dip, don't mistake it for a failed move. Everyone hits that moment. The low point isn't the end of the story. It's actually the middle. And if you keep going, keep building community, keep putting yourself out there, keep learning Spanish, the curve will rise. It will rise towards adjustment, confidence, and as I say, feeling at home. Community is one of those things that sounds obvious. Of course, community matters. Friendships, connection, a sense of belonging. But here's the catch. It doesn't just appear when you land here, and it doesn't happen overnight. Think of it in stages. Stage 1 might be making sure to go to the same fruit vendor and having a brief, awkward chat in Spanish each time. Stage 2 might be inviting another couple over for dinner and, having an evening with new friends. And stage 3 is where you share something personal with a good friend, a hope or a worry. Each stage takes time. It's like the first day at school. It's not going to happen instantly. I often think of Toby and Lindsay and family, a couple that I spent the day with in Bilbao in a video a year or so ago. And look, they just said yes to everything in the early few years. And within 2 years, Toby was playing a traditional Basque instrument in the city stadium before a local football match. And that didn't happen by accident. It happened because they invested in building community. And here's the thing that people often overlook. Community doesn't start when you arrive in Spain. It starts before. So when you're in the planning phase of your move, it's incredibly helpful to have people who are going through the same process as you around you. Because let's be honest, your family and friends possibly don't fully understand your decision to move to Spain. They don't know why you're making this move. But other people planning a move to Spain, they get it. And where do you find these other people? Look, online. That's the reality. Yep. Facebook groups, Reddit, other forums, they can be very valuable for finding your tribe. And if you spot someone who seems to share your values or plans, send them a DM, connect with them, and see where it goes. These are the people that are walking the same path as you, and many of them will be in Spain one day too. They may be your neighbors. And these connections can make all the difference to your move. And to be honest, shameless plug here, many alumni of my Move to Spain Masterclass have said that the community that comes with the program has been one of the most valuable parts of the whole experience. Some people in the community are still waiting on visas, some are already in Spain, some are still a few years away from their move. But just being able to share where you're at and learn from like-minded, accepting people has been incredibly powerful for participants in the masterclass. So don't wait until you're in Spain. Start building your circle now. Start building it through your planning phase and keep nurturing it once you're here, because whether it's bureaucracy, culture shocks, or language struggles, everything is easier when you're not facing it alone. Okay, I just mentioned language struggles, learning Spanish. I know this is a big concern for many of you. And yes, learning Spanish will be one of your biggest challenges, but it's also going to be one of your biggest assets and one of your biggest adventures. And no, you do not need to become fluent, but you do need to dive in. That means find a tutor, take a proper course, invest your time and whatever budget you can towards this goal of diving in and improving your Spanish. And whether you're moving in 2 months or 2 years, please start now. Getting started with Spanish as soon as possible is the biggest thing that people who have moved tell me they wish they had done before their move. And another hard truth here, I'm sorry, but Duolingo doesn't cut it if that's the only tool you're using. You see, the gamification aspect of it gives you the sense of progress when you actually may not be making true progress. It's a tool that's fine for picking up some vocab, but it's not a structured learning roadmap for someone who's moving to Spain. A roadmap is something you'll get from an online tutor or from a course that's, designed for people looking to set up a life here. I'll be honest, I made a big mistake here when it came to learning Spanish. I assumed I'd just pick it up. I'd pick up Spanish as I went, especially given my wife, Yoli, is Spanish. Huge mistake. It really slowed down my learning progress massively, and it impacted my confidence. And here's another one you need to promise me. When it comes to learning Spanish, you won't let perfection be the enemy of the good. People often ask me, how long did it take you, James, to get fluent? How long until your Spanish was perfect? And the truth is, my Spanish isn't perfect. It will never be perfect. And that's totally fine. Learning a language as an adult doesn't have a finish line. It's ongoing. There are highs, lows, and plateaus. The key is you got to stay engaged, keep showing up, keep practicing. And if you do that, Spain will keep opening up to you in return. Now, I want to be clear. I'm not here to scare you. I'm here to give you a no-filter look at moving to Spain so you can prepare and be prepared. Moving to a new country, is a huge life change, and there will be bumps along the way. But if you expect them, they won't throw you off track. They won't totally destabilize your move. And over time, you'll realize that these bumps aren't roadblocks at all. They're simply the ups and downs of what is possibly going to be one of the most rewarding adventures of your life. Okay, so I just met up with a couple from my Move to Spain masterclass who have recently moved to a small town near Valencia, and they're living a lot of these truths right now. So check out their story in this video over here, and I'll see you over there in a moment.